Alright, hello everybody and welcome to the grand finals of the Chronicle Community Cup. Absolutely. All of these games for the finals were of course casted live on Twitch, but today I wanted to go through the matchups myself because, well, since I was one of the ones playing the games, I never really got the opportunity to narrate my own decisions or explain the actual thoughts behind each of my plays. So this is game number 1. And it's a Linza Mirror, so I can get rid of these heals, Dagannoth Fledgling and Full Tetsuki. Not going to be particularly useful here. I'm not expecting him to strike me or deal any damage to me or be aggressive in any way at all. Really what I'm anticipating from him is a similar deck to mine, a fairly defensive, tanky Linza that wants to make it to Chapter 5 and win in the final fight. So aside from those two cards, really, I was very happy with the entire rest of the hand. I've got the Ogre Brute there to decrease his attack. I absolutely want to be doing that ASAP. A Tool Belt to destroy any potential weapons that he might equip in his first slot, a KGP agent, which I'm debating about playing. I don't really want to play that right now because I might discard that other Ogre Brute, which could be very useful. And at the end of the chapter, there is a Goblin Raider for that weapon. Very useful for all of the spend effects that Linza has. But so going to open with this Ogre Brute and knock his attack down to 1 there. I want to be doing that as fast as possible, really. I know I take a lot of damage doing that because, of course, it deals 6 to me, but that's okay. I've got plenty of healing in this deck in the form of Fishing Trawlers, Full Tetsu, Dagannoth Fledgling, which will no doubt show up later on in the game. Tool Belt here, I was really aiming for his Dust Devil so that if that repurpose was a Dust Devil, it wouldn't work and I would keep my 2 attack rather than going down to 1, but still very good. Managed to hit the weapon that he equipped in slot 1 to stop that spend effect from happening. Blocked 10 armor, so I'm pretty pleased about that. Here I'm going to open Road. I chose not to play that KGP agent after all, and then the Goblin Raider specifically goes at the end here because I think it's more likely that he places a potential Tool Belt or Major Mary Rancor in the previous slot, and that is definitely something I want to dodge because usually I'd equip a weapon in that slot and then in the one where I got the Goblin Raider, there'd be a spend effect like Fremenic Crafter or a repurpose of my own or some other spend effect that he may potentially want to deny me from having. My opponent though, Glenn, does bring 10 armor into the next chapter, but because he's at 1 attack, he's not going to keep that armor for very long unless he can increase his attack back up again, as of course, when he's fighting all of the big creatures like Ice Warrior and Dust Devils perhaps of his own, among other things in his deck, he's going to lose that armor now, and part of winning this matchup really is going into the final fight with as much armor as possible. I know I lost a lot of health killing that Ogre Brute, but I can heal that back, as I mentioned. The armor, though, you can't heal back, really. So overall, pretty pleased with that, but as it turns out, that Ogre Brute I specifically held on to isn't going to be particularly useful, especially since I drew 2 Dust Devils as well, but that's okay. The point of keeping it was to make sure that I had a guaranteed way to keep him at 1 attack, because it is perfectly possible that I wouldn't have drawn either of those 2 Dust Devils, and it is perfectly likely that he would have increased his attack as well. Here though, Varrock Museum, going to get me some gold, going to make use of that weapon, this chapter. And then the KGP agent, as I mentioned, I'm holding 2 Dust Devils and an Ogre Brute. I don't need all of those ways to keep his attack down. I can certainly afford to get rid of one of them. So this is a much better chapter to be playing KGP agent. And I'm perfectly okay with discarding the Fishing Trawler as well. In fact, I would much rather play Full Tetsu as it grants armor. That's what I'd rather be spending my gold on, gaining armor and health. So I'm okay with not playing it this chapter, holding off on that for a bit longer before I start healing. So that does conclude a fairly uneventful chapter 2, especially for my opponent. All he did was refresh his weapon and then play a Tool Belt, which actually didn't hit anything. So worth pointing out that there is now 1 less Tool Belt to think about in my opponent's deck, though certainly there could be another, and I have known Linzas to run more than just Tool Belts. Major Mary Rancor, among other things, can certainly make their way into the deck. So this chapter, now chapter 3, I'm thinking about, I really am going to have to start healing soon in preparation for that final fight on chapter 5, and I didn't draw the Full Tetsu, which is a bit sad, so I do play the Fishing Trawler. I actually swapped that with the Ice Warrior there, as slot 1 is where I'm quite likely to equip a weapon, and there could, if he's going to grief a weapon, be something targeting the weapon that I equip in slot 1. So I shift it up a slot. I'm not that happy about repurposing a 1/4 weapon. It is quite a large weapon that is much better for spending on things like Dust Devils or Varrock Museums. Repurpose doesn't matter how big your weapon is, you're going to get the same amount of value out of it, and that is sad. So But it's okay, I'm going to develop the character a little bit. I am still making the most out of those slots, and 10 armor is definitely going to be very useful in that final fight, as I keep mentioning. But here, he's going to bring out his Ice Warrior. He's going to kill that with his weapon so he doesn't lose too much of his armor. Nicely done. And then he's going to Dust Devil me back down to 2 attack, which is a little bit sad. Oftentimes, you know, it does matter, because I'd be at 2 attack, I'd go down to 1, and it means that Ice Warrior at the very end of the chapter, I would take 9 damage killing, but because I'm at 2 attack, that's going to be completely okay, and I'm still going to kill it in 2 hits. But worth pointing out that sometimes people like to hold on to their KGP agents. Don't play them at all until Chapter 5, because, you know, okay, they bring you down to 1 attack, and then you stay at 1 attack. If you stay at 1 attack, they have no incentive to play any Ogre Brutes, or Dust Devils, or Karens, or anything like that against you, because you're at 1 attack. Why would they? And then you play the KGP agents on Chapter 5, and out of nowhere you're back up to 3 attack, which they haven't had the opportunity to sort of grief you back down. So worth thinking about that, but I did want to play my KGP agent earlier, as it was a good opportunity to do so, as I didn't mind the cards in my hand, I didn't mind discarding those. And as a direct result of doing it like that, I held on to the armor that I got from Repurpose. If he'd brought me down to 1 attack rather than 2, and that Ice Warrior, as I mentioned, would have been pretty painful, and I wouldn't have that 7 armor that I have now. This matchup really is squeezing as much value as you possibly can out of all of the different ways that you can gain armor and attack points, and equally try to stop your opponent from gaining armor and attack points. This isn't really supposed to happen. You're not supposed to fight Linza with this deck. This deck, as you can see, it has Karam in it. It's much better against Raptor. You have, you know, much more playable cards. Dust Devil, Ogre Brute, Karam are much easier to play in when playing that matchup. This deck also has a lot of healing in it, in the form of, you know, 2 Fledglings, 2 Trawlers, 2 Tetsus. And because of that, it's very good against aggressive decks as well. If you'd like a guide on how to play this deck, or you'd like to see the deck list, take a look in the link in the description. There is a written up guide that I put on chronicledex.com for your pleasure. Out of all of the matchups, the mirror matchup is probably the hardest to play. It's the most complex because there's all of these very, very small things. Something as big as 7 armor that I have there really could be the defining factor of winning this game. This matchup isn't particularly explosive. It is very low octane. It's a slow match. You end up fighting your opponent oftentimes where you both have 1 attack on the final chapter. But I like the deck, and overall I think it has a very good win rate against everything out there, and in a format where you have to win once with every single legend, that is this tournament, that is the format, then, you know, absolutely it makes sense for us to both open with this deck, right? So, back in the game, here we just spent our weapon on the Fremennik Crafter. It says spend weapon, draw 4 cards, and those 4 cards are certainly going to give me a lot more options going into the final chapter. Obviously, I would have preferred to have found that Fremennik Crafter and had those options earlier in the game, but better late than never. And next up is Dust Devil. It's not going to do anything. 1, because I don't have a weapon, and 2, because even if it did do something, he's at 1 attack. He cannot go below that. I know it didn't do anything. I played it deliberately, and I did that to get rid of it from my hand. I just didn't want the card in my hand, because since I played Fremennik Crafter, I went up to 9 cards in hand, and that means that I would only draw 1 at the start of the next chapter, as you can only draw 3 cards per turn, and the maximum hand size is indeed 10. So getting rid of that card brings these down to 8 cards in hand, meaning I can draw 2 here, and I thought to myself, what really wins this game? And what really locks down the win here would be finding that next KGP agent. If I could bring myself up to 3 attack, or guarantee that I could go into the final fight with 2 attack, should he, of course, grief me back down to 1, then that really improves my odds of winning by the largest percentage possible. You know, having 1 extra attack is, if I was on 1 attack, going back up to 2 is like having 100% extra damage output in that final fight, which is absurd. That's why I was so aggressively, you know, making sure that I could have the maximum possible odds on getting that KGP agent, but don't find that, and that is very sad. And here I'm playing around with a Karam. I'm seeing if I'd have enough gold to perhaps guarantee that he has 1 attack, because no matter how much he increases it, even if he plays both the KGP agents in the way that I mentioned earlier, then he'd still be at 1 attack, right? Overall, I think, you know, he probably would have played the KGP agents by now, and actually something else that I'm thinking about is Tetsu Katana. That is a way you really can lock down this Linza mirror. If you put Tetsu Katana in your deck instead of Karam, you can sometimes bring that into the final fight and really smash them hard with so much extra damage. I personally prefer Karam, but it's still a real threat. But I can't do anything about it. I'm going first. If he places a Tetsu Katana in his final slots, I cannot do anything about it because, you know, I play Tool Belt in my final slot. It does nothing. And then he gets the final uncounterable action going second and equips that Katana. Going second is so strong in a matchup like this, and I really would have preferred to have gone second. So overall, I think the best course of action is to play double full Tetsu. I know I don't get all of the healing value, but I certainly do get a lot more armor, and there you can see my phase cam. I'm not happy about the Tetsu Katana, because even from the start of this game, I was just thinking, no matter how much value I squeeze out, I don't want Katana, because I personally think Karam is better overall, considering all of the other matchups. Well, Raptor, if you don't run Karam, this matchup is borderline unplayable as Linzer. Here, though, he interestingly does, you know, play the Tetsu Katana and then the Tool Belt. So I could have countered it, but I just didn't think I'd be able to because I'm going first. I just didn't even try. And I would stand by that decision. After the game, Glenn told me that he knew that there was a real possibility I could have killed his weapon, but he just really didn't think I would. And he wanted to make sure I didn't have a weapon because he saw that I had a lot of gold. But as it turns out, me having 2 extra attack really does actually win me the game here, despite him having a weapon there. The fact that he was at 1 attack, just, you know, I had 100% more damage than him once that weapon had run out. And I suppose that really does highlight how big finding those KGP agents would have been. But that is game number 1. Thank you very much for watching. Game number 2 will be out soon. Do subscribe if you enjoyed listening to this and would like to see more from me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all again next time.